Hello. Today we are here again to do a recording of a Buddhist service for you and for us. It is Wednesday, September the 23rd, 2020, when we are recording this. I don't have any idea when you'll all see it, but hopefully it's useful that you have the context of knowing when we are recording it. Here in Madison, it is a sunny, bright day, but you can I think it's the smoke from the very high atmosphere from the California fires, which we are experiencing here. Pretty amazing. Hopefully none of you have family or friends that have been threatened by those incredible fires, and that you are all doing well. I'll let my friend Miss Ross say hello.
Hi everybody, just grateful to be back here again today with my friend Miss Shepherd, and just we're thinking of you and holding you in our thoughts, and hoping you're doing well and that your practice is helping to sustain you. So just grateful to be here.
Thank you. Another reminder, just that if you do have thoughts or comments or questions, please do get them to your chaplain or whoever is running this program for you. We would love to be able to respond to them directly. So today, during the service, we will do the Refuges and Precepts in Pali, as we had a request for that from one of the prisons. So we're happy to respond to requests. So our chanting, instead of being the chant we had been doing for quite a while, we'll now do the what's called the preliminary homage to the Buddha. That's the Namo Tassa chant. And then we'll take the 3 refuges in Pali, and then we'll take the 5 precepts together. And this is all on page 19 and 20 of the books that you have in the chapel, hopefully. So if you could grab those, there hopefully is enough. If there aren't enough for the people that are coming now, please let me know and I will get more to the chaplains. So we'll run it as usual. I'll go and light the candles and incense. We'll come back and we'll do the chanting, and then we'll have a guided meditation, about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation about some sort of Dhamma topics. So I will put the shrine on. Okay, so in the middle of page 19 in the chant book. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And now the refuges both in Pali and English. Panatipata Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Suramaraya maja Pamadatana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani Pancha Sikapadani Silena Sukatinyanti Silena Boga Sampada Silena Nibutinyanti Tasma Silan Visodaye. These precepts have virtue as a vehicle for happiness, have virtue as a vehicle for good fortune, have virtue as a vehicle for liberation. Let virtue be purified. So coming into a meditation, a time of quiet, a time to cultivate awareness. Maybe the mind or the environment isn't quiet, but what is quiet is our ability to bring awareness. Because in awareness itself, there is stillness, there is quiet. Even if what is occurring exterior, or even in the heart, is not so quiet. So this idea of bringing awareness, being the knowing, I think we've talked about that before. But it is something to continue to inquire about in your own practice. In this very moment, as you're sitting in your chair or on a cushion, how can you bring into awareness just how it is, just what's happening now? One way you might begin is by working with sound, noticing what sounds may be present in the body or externally. Not to name them, not to evaluate them, not to consider why they're there or decide you don't want them there, but just the knowing, oh, this is sound. Sound is present. Learning to relate to sound through awareness that sound is happening in consciousness. But so frequently, we experience something in consciousness and then immediately what gets added are thoughts and stories, memories, plans, ideas. So in our practice, we're trying to separate those two to realize that in fact they are separate. They happen so fast that we often think they are the same thing. But in our meditation, we begin to recognize that they're not the same. That there is an awareness that is always there, always present. And that it is not necessarily tied to all those thoughts and stories that arise. So can we release, or at least not follow all those thoughts and stories and ideas, and just be with the experience of sound? Hearing is like this. Simple. Just hearing. So using sound might be one way to begin your meditation, to help you get grounded in the clarity and purity of just awareness. And as the awareness gets stronger, you may well notice that breathing is happening too. That there's hearing, and there is an in-breath and an out-breath. So when the breath becomes evident, you might shift awareness, shift attention to the breath, to knowing the experience of breathing in, knowing the experience of breathing out. Again, making it as simple as you can. Just, oh, this is breathing in is like this. Breathing out is like this. And it can be difficult to stay with the simple knowing that all those thoughts come rushing in and frequently pull us away. So having some strategies to help us stay with the breath can be very helpful. So the in-breath is pretty evident. It's a little more interesting. It's kind of more energizing. So one strategy might be to focus a lot of attention on the external, on the breathing out, the exhalation. Because it's often, you can notice for yourself, see if this is the case for you, but for many people, where we wander into thinking is on the exhale, because it's not quite as engaging, quite as energizing. So oftentimes thoughts sneak in on that exhale. So putting more attention on the exhale, more mindfulness, to really stay with the exhale all the way out can be a good strategy to help us stay more present. And even more refined than just staying with the exhale is to see if you can notice the end of the exhale. And it may be that at the very end of the exhale, before that next inhale, there's a tiny pause. So just as focusing on sound can be a useful way to begin a meditation, turning to the end of the exhale is another way that might help. So maybe for the rest of this meditation, use one or the other of these for helping to stay in awareness, stay in the knowing, rather than getting lost in storylines and thinking. So just to remember, to remind you, one is noticing sound. Without getting caught up in likes or dislikes or what's the story behind it or whose voice is that, or is it a voice, or is it a bird, or is it a plane, what is it? None of that. Just knowing, hearing, this is sound. Noticing how sound arises, is present, and perhaps then changes or ends. And then you might be aware of a new sound. So that's one strategy. And the other is to notice the end of each out-breath. Doing these as continuously as possible. And when we get pulled away, as we likely will, not a problem, not making it a problem. Just when we realize we've been pulled away, that we're not with the present moment, that we're not mindful, instead we're lost, we come back. We begin again. Simple, that's all. Not a big deal. We just begin again. And it's in the beginning again that we strengthen our ability to be present. So I forgot to note the time, so I'm not sure how long the meditation was. I'm hoping it wasn't too short or too long. So I have a bit of a cold today, so I'm a little slow, and I may need to blow my nose, which is not a pleasant sound, but I will persist. So what I thought I'd talk about today is something that I've been reflecting on, considering. And it arose through some conversations I've been having with my daughter-in-law, my new daughter-in-law, who I am very fond of, very happy to have her in the family. And she has begun a new training. She's training to be a cosmetologist, so she's going to beauty school. she's been wanting to do this quite a while, and it's finally been able to happen. She had some health issues, so she had to put it off. So she was very glad to get started, and then the pandemic hit. And so it ended up that it couldn't be in person, that most of it is online, which of course for learning to cut hair is not ideal. So that was a disappointment. It worked out that, in fact, one day a week she can go in person and people distance and all of that. But hearing her talk about this experience of starting to something new and trying to learn something really got me thinking about this whole idea of learning. And that really what all learning is learning how to learn. That it's not about the object of learning, it's about how do we get past all of the obstacles that our minds and hearts put up that actually prevent us from learning what's being presented. And I thought of this because I think there's no doubt that I do that a lot, and that I certainly have throughout my life. That, there were teachers and people trying to teach me things, and I couldn't take it in. I would put up objections. I didn't like getting advice, or that I would just get resistant. So I think that the BuddhaDhamma, what we're practicing, what we're learning about, the BuddhaDhamma is about learning to learn. Because the BuddhaDhamma is teaching us to be open to the experience that's happening, and to not add in all of our views and opinions and stories and thoughts and fears and worries that get in the way of actually receiving what's coming our way. At least that's what I've experienced. That as she was talking about, and she has been very frustrated with this program, it hasn't gone the way she hoped. And of course, all of her hopes for the program were to have a good teacher, to have clear instruction, to expect it to be not too hard. And those expectations, they may work out, but chances are pretty good they won't too. You can't promise you're always going to have a good teacher. You can't promise that the text or the way, the person who's presenting it to you is going to be clear. You can't promise you're going to get feedback from that person to help you. And likely, learning anything is not going to be very easy because it's new. It's not familiar. And then the other obstacles we put up for ourselves are getting frustrated when it's not easy, when it's not like we expected, when the teacher doesn't do what we want, comparing ourselves to others based on nothing, right? Looking around the room and saying, oh, they're all doing it great and they all understand it and I'm being left behind. Reaching a plateau, sort of maybe getting a little bit and then feeling stuck, thinking that, gee, I should be learning faster. After 3 weeks in this program, my daughter-in-law was complaining that she didn't know anything yet. It's an 18-month program. And after 3 weeks, of course she didn't know anything yet. But, very familiar. I've done that. We all do that. So as, because this was so evident in our conversations, of course, then I started noticing it more in myself too. I've been doing a lot of sewing here at home, trying to learn some new things, how to put a zipper in. I made a tote bag, but I wanted a zipper at the top. And then it has pockets, but I want them to be zippered pockets. So I have to try to learn how to do those things. And I could see how resistant I've become. How when I don't know how to do it, then I get afraid not to do it because I don't know how to do it. Which of course is, talk about a cycle. you don't know how to do it, and so then you don't do it because you don't know how to do it. So those are all learning styles, learning practices that we can change and that get in our way. And absolutely, I think what meditation and the BuddhaDhamma, the Buddha's teachings, tell us is how do we not let those sorts of things get in our way? How do we see them for what they are? See that my drop in motivation to make this tote bag because I don't know how to do it is counterproductive, is ridiculous. That if I want to make the tote bag, then I can't be surprised that I don't know how to make the tote bag. And I need to try and do the best I can, and to not expect it's going to be perfect, to not expect it's going to be fast, to not expect that the YouTube videos I see online are going to be exactly the way presented in the way I can understand and how I like it, and that the teachers are nice. And I mean, it's crazy, right? But we do that. We do it at our own loss. So what I'm suggesting is that we begin to pay attention to how we learn, to notice what are the patterns in my own life about how I've reacted when I've wanted to learn things. So thinking about school, what happened in school? Did you get resistant? I certainly did. Maybe you did too. But I remember I have a cousin. No, she's not a cousin. She's my niece. So she's a lot younger than I am. She's my niece. And she was just, I mean, she's very bright, but she's not an extraordinary genius. But she could learn. It was just amazing. She learned from everyone. And of course, teachers loved her because she could learn. She didn't put up all these objections of, that they weren't good enough, or, all the resistances that we put up. She didn't do that. So she learned everything. She learned instruments and music and sports and academics. She could learn. But it wasn't that she was smarter than anyone else. It was that she knew how to learn. So I think that's what we're doing. We're learning how to learn. And how to learn is learning to be open. Learning to notice the sorts of resistances we are putting up that are getting in our way. And so that learning how to learn is something that we bring to our meditation as well. And actually, it's through our meditation that we can start to recognize, well, where are these obstacles that I'm putting up that don't let me learn the way I want? And it doesn't mean, watch the sort of continuing expectations and misperceptions that you may be bringing. So it doesn't mean that then learning is simple and that you learn it right away. It just means you're not adding resistance. It's still hard. Learning is still a challenge. It still might not, the teacher might still not be good. But what we're doing is noticing, how am I making it worse? What are these ideas? This comes back to the knowing and the thinking. How do I just be with this experience of feeling frustrated? Because I don't understand what it's saying about how to put that zipper in. I can't get it in my head. How do I be with that experience and just keep reading the instructions, or just keep listening to whoever is talking you through something, or just keep watching if you're able to be watching someone else do it? So there was a book that I had. It's a Buddhist book, and it was called How You Do Anything is How You Do Everything. I always really liked that. I always thought, oh, that's true. I can see how that's kind of accurate. But actually, as I've thought more about it now, I don't think it's true. I think that it's true until we begin to look at our own patterns and maybe be able to change them. So if we are ignorant of our patterns of how we learn and the ways we put up resistances, then I think it's true that how we do anything is how we do everything. But as we begin to be able to actually pay attention to how we learn and the ways we maybe put up resistance, then I think it can change. Then I think we can learn how to do some things and maybe do them in ways different than those other things that we haven't actually examined yet. So this idea of learning is really key to the Buddha's teachings. It's central. I do think that it's everything that the BuddhaDhamma is about. Learning how to learn, learning how to be open, learning how to open to our experience of life and see it clearly, understand it. So here's how Ajahn Amaro described meditation. He says, whatever happens today, whatever happens during sitting meditation or walking meditation, it's my intention to learn from that. Whether it's pleasant or painful, expected or unexpected, familiar or unfamiliar, it has something to teach me. There are lessons it can bring. Ajahn Chah talks about it as everything is teaching us. So how do we open to what those lessons are? Set aside all of our views and opinions and expectations and hopes and desires and just receive the lessons of our life. It can also be really useful to recognize that I think for many of us, we actually learn more from the unpleasant. Think about the biggest lessons you've had in your life. Many of them may have been around unpleasant things that taught you maybe to go a different direction or showed you the kinds of pitfalls that maybe you're more prone to fall into. So we don't have to be afraid of the unpleasant. When we encounter the unpleasant, that's our learning opportunity. We learn to respond to it rather than resist it, right? My habit was resistance. That teacher doesn't know anything. That person can't tell me anything. That's resistance. That's not responding to it. So can we look to our attitude toward whatever is happening and release that struggle, release the resistance, release the fear. Oftentimes it's fear that keeps us from being able to learn. And instead open. Open with kind-heartedness and with willingness to be present to whatever is happening. So when I'm trying to put in a zipper, to open to, oh, this is frustration. Frustration is like this. When I'm learning something new, it makes sense. There will be frustration. For my daughter-in-law, open to, this teacher is not the best. She's not willing to give me feedback. She's not really present. She doesn't seem to really care. Oh, sometimes learning is like that. How do I learn when that's what's going on? Rather than spending all my time spinning my wheels resisting it, thinking it should be other ways. She should be better. She should do this. The school is wrong. On and on. Doesn't help. It doesn't help us learn. If our goal, our intention is to learn. So recognizing too that sometimes our resistance to the unpleasant can really get in the way. But the unpleasant can be a wonderful teacher for us. Another monk, Ajahn Jayasaro, said this. He said, one of the jobs of meditation is to expose defilements, is the word that's often used in the Buddhist teachings. What it means is unwholesome attitudes of mind. unwholesome behaviors: greed, hatred, irritation, guilt, judgment, all of those things. So one of the jobs of meditation is to expose the way those things, those unwholesome mind states that don't help us, arise in the mind. He says, so it isn't bad when our meditation isn't blissful. We don't need to expect meditation to be blissful, that we learn from whatever is arising in our meditation. That we see these mind states of resistance, of anger, of guilt, of greed, of irritation. We see them as conditions, causes and conditions, not who and what I am. So whatever you are trying to do, whether it's taking on meditation, whether it's getting better at basketball, whether it's in your classwork there at the prison, whether it's in your job, you get thrown into a job and maybe you haven't gotten any training and there's lots of demands. I know those, if you're working in the kitchen, it's a pretty intense environment. To remember that the object is always learning how to learn. To think, rather than to think of it as learning to do a particular thing, think of it in terms of learning how to learn. Because what we're fundamentally always learning is, how do I learn? Why is this so hard? What's getting in the way of me being able to learn? Where is the resistance to the learning? How do I open to the experience? And that's what the knowing that we talked about is opening to the experience. So maybe that's, hopefully that isn't as foggy as my head feels right now. Miss Ross, any thoughts?
Yeah, this is a great topic. And it's funny, I was just reading something this morning talking about that, especially in our practice, where we have an expectation of what the goal of our practice is. And so we have this, we're either going to go for calm or that we're going to figure this all out, and then when that doesn't happen, like instantaneously, just feeling that resistance. And in this thing that I was reading, it was just talking about that, like just letting go of those expectations, letting go of thinking, where any of this is going to lead. It doesn't stop. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't stop us from still moving forward, but it stops us from having the expectation of what the outcome's going to be, that when things aren't going in that direction, then we start resisting and we start shutting down, and then we stop learning, and trying to find that middle way is really interesting. And the thing that keeps coming up for me, and things that I read, and teachers, everything from psychologists to Dharma teachers, is curiosity and interest. Like just being curious rather than thinking what the end result is, like what's happening right now, and like where is this leading, and can I just follow wherever this is, whether it's somebody teaching me something or whether it's an experience that I can feel myself resisting. Like maybe I can just learn from observing my resistance, like that why is this pushing my button? What am I pushing away? What do I want? Or am I checking out? So all of those things. And the curiosity then takes the goal setting, it takes the personality out of it, and it's just this mind that's just curious about like what's going on here. Almost like a small child. How much small children can really learn fast because they don't have a preconceived idea of where this is all going, right? It's only when we get older and think we know what the answer is going to be that we stop really learning, but the amount of learning that happens in the first, 2 years of life is huge, until we get a personality that has a strong will of a 2-year-old, and then we start shutting down and not learning as much. So, that's kind of, what all comes to mind for me. And just keeping that curiosity, letting go of any expectation. It doesn't mean that we don't have a, you know, a motivation or a intention behind what we're trying to, you know, the idea of learning. You know, we don't want to be stagnant, but we also want to not, we just want to be curious rather than have a preconceived notion that's going to set us up to being resistant when it's not going the way we want it to. And I find this over and over again. My biggest frustration in practice was when I had a cookbook type Dharma instruction. Somebody said it will proceed like this and this and this and this and this. And then I started doing it. It didn't go that way. And my mind just seized up. And I had like this huge crisis of faith, like maybe I can't do this practice. But it was because I had the wrong teacher. You know, they were saying it will be like this, and they weren't acknowledging that everybody's mind is different. How we learn is different. And that's why all of us, when we come in and volunteer, we teach different ways of how to do meditation, how to look at the Dharma, you know, because everybody has a different mind, a different experience, and we all learn in different ways. And so, you know, not being frustrated when whatever something is being said isn't making sense. It's just because your mind doesn't work the way that person's mind works, but it doesn't mean there's anything inherently wrong. You know, it's just, you weren't ready to receive that right now. It's like, let that go. Wonder what that was all about, you know, and then go on to the next thing. But, you know, still stay curious, like what all's going on. So that's kind of how I work with all this lately, having had that almost train wreck of crisis of faith, and that one, it just totally, I let down all my defenses after that. I go, I'm done thinking I know how this is all going to go, whether it's in the Dharma or life. It's just like, where's this leading down? And I have one teacher, Mark Nunberg, who said his path, and this was a number of years ago, he said that, he says, basically, he says, just trying to stay curious about what's the thread that I can follow that leads me to freedom. Like, no, not having a preconceived idea, and the thread may get tangled up sometimes, and it may, you know, you may start to lose it, but, you know, like, can we stay interested enough to still have our eye on the thread without having a preconceived notion of how it's going to, you know, manifest. So that's how I play with this. But a great topic, though. I mean,
oh, wonderful.
For life and Dharma.
Yeah, thank you. No, a couple thoughts that you sort of sparked in me is, can I remember them now? That sometimes, you know, you talked about expectations, that, you know, sometimes it's like what we're learning isn't actually what we're going to learn. How do I say that? That, you know, we're trying. So the most important thing we may be learning from a certain situation may not be what we went in to learn, what we thought we were going in to learn. So, for example, you know, my daughter-in-law, she thinks she's going in to learn how to cut hair and do cosmetology. Well, maybe what she'll learn is that, and this isn't true for her, I'm just trying to give an example, is that cutting hair is great, but she actually doesn't like the sort of environment that job would offer her. And that's a really important learning. So, you know, we have to recognize what are the learnings that we're learning that aren't what we planned to learn. And that's the being open to learning. So, for example, I mean, I've had exactly the kind of situation that Ms. Ross was talking about, where, you know, when you've been practicing meditation for a long time and you've encountered a lot of teachers, there are always teachers that you encounter and you have no idea what they're saying. or you try what they're saying, and it's just, you can feel yourself getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Well, what I finally figured, what I'm trying to point to today, is that doesn't mean that what they're teaching is wrong or that I'm wrong. What I can learn from that is how I seize up when I think I can't do something. That's the learning. That's the most important learning that I could take away from that. Oh, that's a not helpful pattern. And I can see that pattern repeating over and over and over. You know, when my a family member says something I don't like or don't agree with, do I seize up like that? That's the learning, even though I thought I was, trying to do the meditation like that person was saying. What it's teaching me is, how do I react? And how are those reactions problematic in my life? And there was one other thing, and what was it? Oh, well, probably not important. But maybe let's end with a short meditation. And Ms. Ross, why don't you lead us in it?
Sure.
Maybe 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Yeah, so we can just let go of the words, the ideas, concepts, not try to figure out what it all means. So just coming in for this meditation to get regrounded and experiencing what's happening right here, right now. So let the bell be the transition. And we can, with the fading of the sound of the bell, we can bring our awareness just to this sense of being present, this body present right here, right now, in whatever posture we're in. A sense of groundedness of the body, the support, the body resting on this support, feeling held, grounded. And in the same way, we can feel the mind resting in the body, however we perceive that. And just being aware of what we're aware of. Maybe we're aware of the physical sensation, maybe we're aware of thoughts racing, maybe we're still processing what was talked about for the past few minutes. Just noticing what's happening right now in this body, this mind, right here, right now. Noticing the changing nature of that awareness. Maybe we'll notice a thought in 1 second, and then a physical sensation another, and then a sound, and another thought, and just watching the changing nature of this experience. Not trying to control it, but just seeing the different things arise in our awareness and pass away. Sounds, sensations, thoughts. Coming into the awareness and then fading as the next thing comes in. And maybe we notice some of the sensations have a stronger pull than others. Maybe a thought has a strong story to it, or a sensation of pain or whatever has some juice to it that holds our attention, and we can feel that holding on to that and feeling the resistance to just letting that move, right? And can we just be aware of that and then not hold into the story of the experience or the thought, and then watch it move on and see the next thing arise. Thoughts, sounds, sensations arising and passing away in awareness. Noticing as they come and go with ease, and when there's some stickiness, what does the awareness, the mind hold on to? Is it a story? Is it a sensation? And by being curious about this, we can observe what the patterns of our mind are. What are the things that we're holding on to? How does that feel in the mind and the body? We can feel the tension that comes from that holding. And then we can invite space, movement, to just let it keep flowing. And in this way, we learn the patterns of our mind, what causes stress, what doesn't cause stress. And through continual observing this, we can keep learning how to live with less stress in our life. This is our practice on the cushion and in everyday life.
Thank you for the meditation. I think actually I'm going to end today slightly differently. We won't do our sharing the merit. Instead, I want to share a chant, which I'll put up on the screen for you. This is it's often called a funeral chant, but it's done not only at funerals, it's done at any point to recognize change and impermanence. But I felt like it was appropriate now because I don't know when you were going to be hearing this, but yesterday, on the 22nd of September, as you may well have heard, our country reached 200,000 people dead from this pandemic. That is a horrific number. I mean, that is almost the entire city of Madison. It is the entire city of Salt Lake City, I've been told. It is just the amount of grief and loss that 200,000 figure represents is enormous. And it felt appropriate that as a community, we should acknowledge those lives, acknowledge the grief that we all feel, acknowledge the loss that we have in losing those 200,000 people to our world, and also acknowledge the amazing goodness that they all gave to us and our appreciation that we had them for the time they were here. So I think we'll end with this funeral chant. It's traditionally, I'm going to put it on the screen. It's traditionally chanted 3 times. Oops, wrong thing, huh? Is it? Oh no, it's the right one. Okay. So I'm going to chant it in Pali, but the English translation, there are different English translations, but the English translation is all conditioned things, like human beings, are impermanent. Their nature is to arise and pass away. Having arisen, they cease. Such insight brings lasting peace or happiness. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upajita vanirujanti te sanupasamo sukho. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upajita vanirujanti te sanupasamo sukho. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upajita vanirujanti te sanupasamo sukho. So that's a chant that's actually brought me great comfort at many points in my life. I chanted it at my mother's before she was dying and at her death. I've chanted it for friends. I chanted it at a cremation of my friend's mother. It's just something really important that can help us through the difficulty of loss, and also hopefully acknowledge the amazing goodness that people bring to our lives and our appreciation to their presence, even for only a brief time. So in honor of the 200,000 that have passed, and in honor of all of you and the goodness you bring through your practice, be well, take care. We'll hope to see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.